Virtuosi Concert's pre-concert chat. My name is Madeline Hildebrand, and today we're talking to Victoria Sparks, Elishia Ratel, and Wyatt King about their upcoming percussion concert titled All in Good Time. The concert premieres on YouTube on February 26th at 7:30 p.m. This concert is also our second and final installment of performances featuring teachers and their students. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure meeting you all last weekend in your recording session. And speaking of being all together that weekend, I'm curious, was this something out of the ordinary? How often have you physically been together in the past few months? I'd love to hear from, let's start with Elishia.
Yeah, we've been together, sort of distance for the past few months. We've been having a lot of rehearsals in separate rooms and whatnot with miking equipment to sort of still be able to play together, but at a safe distance and still have that sort of community and in-person feel, I guess, but just in a safe way.
Rehearsals in separate rooms, that I don't know how that would work right now. Are there speakers that are connecting your mics to each other's rooms?
We've been very fortunate. Our sound technician on campus has set up pods of rooms with headsets and mics in them so that they can all run through a communal soundboard, and so that we can actually rehearse trios and quartets in isolation in separate rooms so everybody is safe by themselves, but you can hear everybody in real time. It's pretty fantastic.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a feat of technology.
My students say they like I teach it from the soundboard with a microphone, and so they say that they like that I'm teaching with my podcast voice. I don't yell as much as I do in real rehearsals.
Well, and speaking of teaching, Victoria, what has this school year looked like since September? What have lessons been like? How's your studio dealing with this pandemic? And have you found any silver linings in the last few
months? I have said over and over again, I am so in awe of how resilient our students have been. Mine in particular, of course, because I know them and see them and love them to death. But we've been very fortunate to figure out some ways to make some things work, and then figure out how to adapt the things that weren't working. We were able to kind of make arrangements to send equipment home with students so that they would have some things at home, so that we could make that function. Like Wyatt's got a marimba behind him there. I think Ellie and her roommate are both in the studio, so they got two instruments, so they have a marimba and a vibraphone in their living room in their apartment. So we've been really fortunate that way to be able to provide our students with some equipment. And then that way, when they're doing their lessons online from home, they actually do have an instrument to play. We've also been exploring found instruments and kind of taking a piece that's written for drums and reorganizing it for flower pots and pans and all these little odd things that we have around, and actually arranging the pieces ourselves for the found things that we have. So we've been kind of using it as a time to explore some of those fun ideas that are kind of idiomatic to percussion. And also we've been fortunate to be able to make sure that the students do have at least some of the equipment that they would normally have access to.
That's very cool. Speaking of found objects, I'm reminded of a concert that my friend just recently did online where he played a teapot. So it was a really beautiful piece for teapot and electronics, and it worked really, really well. So speaking of equipment, I helped you with the load-in for this recording session on last Saturday, and it was so enlightening seeing all of your gear. I would love for you to tell us what the setup is like for this concert. If you can, how many percussion instruments are involved? And why don't we start with Wyatt?
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for helping out. You are now an honorary percussionist. That's just how it goes. Yeah, moving gear is part of the gig. It's part of the life of a percussionist. We're always moving stuff. For this concert, it's mainly marimba and vibraphone with one big setup of drums. So we've got two bass drums, two toms, two snare drums, two sets of bongos, two cymbals. And yeah, the marimbas, the big old things, they don't just fit in a car. So we got to tear them apart to tiny little pieces and then put them all back together. So it means a lot of trips up and down the stairs. But you know, that's the life, and then I don't have to go to the gym. So
Who needs the gym when you're a percussionist?
We were all saying that we haven't moved very much gear this year because there's been less events and less things. And so we were carrying stuff going, I don't remember these pieces being so heavy.
Yeah, and like part of it's just figuring like, how do I remember how these things go together? Do I remember how to take this apart and pack it away? Yeah, it's just been a long time since we've last done that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. The things that, personally speaking, I'm a pianist, the things that pianists don't think about, you know?
Oh, we constantly are making fun of that. Oh, the piano players, they just expect a piano to show up. Whereas we have to bring everything.
We expect it to be good. Yeah, no, just kidding. Anyway.
That's right, and has it been tuned?
So Wyatt, you mentioned vibraphone. I think this is one of the most intriguing instruments of the percussion family because it has a motor and you plug it in, correct? So
yeah.
I would love to know more about that instrument. And because Elishia has the solo of this concert on a vibraphone, Elishia, do you want to tell us a little bit about this mysterious instrument?
Yeah, the vibraphone is actually my personal favorite. I've loved it since I started playing it. And it's made of like metal bars that function much like a piano with a damper pedal. So you press the pedal down to let the sound sort of resonate with the bars. And a unique feature like within the resonators are like little flaps that oscillate, which is the motor, controlled by the motor, and it sort of like creates a vibrato effect with the sound that you play on the bars. And you can control it like speed wise, and it's just like really interesting. It sort of like adds a new sort of like depth and character to the sound of the vibraphone.
I can't wait to hear the piece that you recorded on the vibraphone, Eric Satie's Gymnopédie. I know this piece for piano, of course, and I just think with the vibrato, it's going to be breathtaking. I can't wait to hear it. So speaking of now the program, I already mentioned the Satie piece, but looking at your program, so many of the composers on the program are current to our day, meaning they are still alive and they're still composing. Percussion music, I find, is largely 20th and 21st century music. Why is that? Maybe, Tori, you can take this one.
Well, percussion has the unique feature of being kind of both the oldest and the newest instrument. There is not a culture on the planet that doesn't have some kind of drums in their cultural music. So it has that kind of ancient feel to it. But there's also this newness to it because it was really discovered in the 20th century as kind of an available sonic palette for composers to really explore in so many different directions. And so I think kind of the discovery of that by kind of all of a sudden led to these crazy things. And I think percussionists have now kind of developed this reputation as like, well, if you want somebody to do something crazy, ask the percussionist their game. They'll kind of try anything. And it's something that we, I think, take a little bit of pride in, is being kind of open-minded to try anything you want. I mean, I've on concert stages, I've done everything from very formal marimba parts to playing brooms and typewriters and smashing things in barrels and how fun is that that we get to do this as well. So I think we kind of tend to run the gambit of everything, and I think we like it that way.
Cool, very neat. But there are also quite a few arrangements on this program, like we've already mentioned, piano music by Satie. There's a violin piece by Bach. There's even a Beatles tune. So can one of you speak to the tradition of percussionists playing music that is intended for other instruments?
I think, or at least in my experience of playing transcriptions, that sometimes there's a bit of people think, oh, you're a drummer, you just hit things. And sometimes I want to prove that I can play the same stuff that everyone else is playing. So I rip open that Bach book and I play a violin concerto on the marimba just to spite them. But Also it's just an experience, and it's a chance to play some of that older music, because we don't have a lot of old music written for us. So to get some of those older styles, we have to reach for a different instruments book.
I love
It's
that.
true. I mean,
Anything
our
that you
oldest repertoire is maybe 100 years old. Xylophone ragtime in the 20s and 1910s. So our repertoire is very new, and there's just so much great music out there. Because we're using instruments from cultures all over the world, I think it just feels quite comfortable and natural to also kind of take on music from anywhere we can find it.
neat.
Yeah, and it's sort of like helps you exercise a lot of creativity and expand like all the different characters that you can use with percussion, just because it's such a vast and diverse like instruments group, so there's lots of different characters to sort of explore and new like flavors to put to different pieces, and I think it's just super fun.
Neat. Wonderful. Well, is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about this program? Either a favorite piece, or the most challenging piece, or an unexpected twist? I'll let you each take the floor.
I'll start and say that we are playing quite a lot of transcriptions in a lot of our solo work, but very intentionally I chose the two duets that I played with Ellie and Wyatt, that are pieces that were written for those instruments and that are extremely idiomatic for the instruments. They really work well, they groove well, they're really fun to listen to, really engaging for the performers. So the duets in this piece and the side-by-side part of it is kind of very strongly in the camp of this stuff is for percussion, written by percussionists, both pieces. Whereas most of the solos that we're playing are exploring a lot of more of these ideas of how do we recreate these things on our instruments. So you kind of get that split of those two kind of concepts in the program that you'll hear.
Nice. Wyatt.
Well, both the pieces I was playing um, are full of notes. They're both just all sorts of notes, um, but are very different, because one of them is written in the last 20 years and the other one written 400 years ago.
They make a great pairing though, because they both deal with a lot of similar musical concepts of how do you make long phrases and shapes out of millions of running notes, where it's all just single lines notes most of the time, and yet you have to kind of construe some shapes out of it. And with Bach, you have a lot of harmony to kind of anchor you, and with the lizard, you don't have as much familiarity with the anchor, but there are other ways that this will just so. I find the two a really great pairing because actually you're kind of dealing with the same problems as the musician, as the interpreter, with the pieces that are so different in harmonic ways, but yet technically deal with a lot of similar challenges.
Cool. Great. And lastly, Elishia, do you want to add anything to explain the program?
I think a good thing to sort of like notice and look out for is just a lot of the different like techniques and like ways that we are using the sticks in our hands to hit the drums and the marimba and vibraphone and whatnot. So there's a lot of like in the duet that Tori and Wyatt are playing, like there's a lot of different like techniques like on the drum with like where you're hitting it and different sounds and like timbres that you can get, and even just with like the character and like what mallets you use and just like the different like four mallet playing styles. Like Wyatt, Tori, and I are using like similar yet different four mallet grips, and they serve different purposes, and just those little like tiny details that nobody really like notices or like even like knows about, that there are all these different ways to hit things. It's not just hitting a drum, it's like the way you do it and like the different sounds you can get and what you can really pick out of it. Yeah, that'd be super fun to look out for.
That's beautiful. Not only is there so many different ways, like you say, you can play each instrument, but there are so many different instruments in the whole percussion family, right? Which is something that we didn't really get to talking about tonight. But I'm just so taken with how you have so many tools and so many ways to use those tools. It's a pretty cool family of instruments.
I was gonna say, we have a really good time playing with all of these tones and colors and ideas. And I have friends who often joke that a percussionist's favorite music store is Home Depot. Um,
That's
um,
right.
and I do love going to the Home Depot and confusing the poor guys who work there because I need to listen to all these sheets of metal and see what they sound like and pick the two that sound the best. I do get a kick out of doing that. But it's really a treat to get to explore all those things. It's a treat to get to share it with my students, to get to do a program like this where I get to kind of help introduce them to a professional world in a professional setting is a really cool experience for me as their teacher, and I think has been a great experience for them, I hope. And I've really enjoyed the chance to actually get to have some rehearsals with them where, okay, now we're working together and I messed that up, we got to start again. I think that's been really fun for me to get to work with them in a new way. And so I also wanted to say thanks for this amazing opportunity. We've had a great time being a part of it.
Oh, well, we're so fortunate that that you were able to do this concert, and we're really looking forward to the music.
Thank you.
On that note, thank you so much for this pre-concert chat. Thank you to our audience for watching, and keep your eye out for February 26th at 7:30 p.m. All concert details will be on the website www.virtuosi.mb.ca.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Thanks.